I think we can all agree on the fact that Germany has already suffered a tremendous reputational loss due to its stance on the war in Gaza over the last 2 years. I think the main problem is that the stance basically undermines its own foreign policy principles, because I think we have to remember that Berlin, Germany, for decades has portrayed itself as a champion of what I would call the civilization of international relations. That means we have said, as Germans, out of a lesson out of our own history, basically, that wars of aggression should be prohibited, that war crimes should be prosecuted, that things like ethnic cleansing should be outlawed. Germany was one of the strongest backers of the International Court of Justice, was one of the nations that brought about also the International Criminal Court. But I think what many people see is that the stance Germany stands on Gaza basically contradicts all of this. It stands basically in contrast to those commitments. And I think maybe where many people see, especially Germany's hypocrisy, is when you compare basically the stance on Gaza with the stance on Ukraine. You know, in Ukraine, Germany frequently evokes international law to justify its backing of Ukraine, says, okay, we do that in order to counter the Russian aggression, in order to counter the Russian occupation of Ukrainian territory. But it simultaneously supports basically, at least, let's say, or doesn't do anything to prevent the Israeli government accused of war crimes, and also a government that has now basically announced de facto ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian population of Gaza, and Germany doesn't do much against it. And I think that's these double standards, maybe, when you compare to Ukraine, it's particularly visible. And I think this double standards this weakens basically Germany's credibility on the international scene. So basically, you can say that when it comes to the Arab and the Muslim world, the West, I mean, Germany is one of the central countries of the West, is basically losing the pro-West people in the West, in the Arab world and in the Muslim world, and that's a major problem. I think that, in the long run, that nobody believes us anymore when we talk about this rules-based order. Nobody believes us anymore when we talk about human rights. I think, right. And obviously, I mean, even beyond the Muslim world, it's also on other continents. I think many countries, many populations also in Africa, Latin America, in Asia, I think they see the war in Gaza as a sort of maybe it reminds them of their own colonial wars, where the colonial master, they were just killing people with complete impunity, and what they see over there is basically a campaign like that. It's a campaign it's a war of annihilation that we see in Gaza. Is whole population, 2 million, more than 2 million people are being collectively punished. And we know the Israeli talk, everything is Hamas, and every school is Hamas, and every mosque is Hamas, and every hospital is Hamas. And, and I don't think that anybody believes that anymore. But I believe they, in the global South, people look at that conflict and they kind of see, look, this is a pro-Western country that commits these crimes. And all of a sudden the West is being very, very silent about that. So I think it's a reputational loss that goes beyond the Muslim world, and I think it's also very felt. And you have mentioned, I mean, the examples of South Africa and Nicaragua that have both basically approached the International Court of Justice. So I think we clearly see that this is not just a regional issue, but it's a global issue.
I do understand the deception and the frustration of countries concerning the German position. However, we must understand that Germany as a country is a consensus society. That means we don't have one leader who decides one morning to go in one particular direction, but this needs to be part of a discussion in the whole society. And this discussion is underway. And if you look at the polls in Germany, the support for the Palestinians and the end of the war in Gaza is very high, around 70%. So the government now has to follow. This will take some time. It is a major change in German foreign policy, so it will not be a decision overnight. But we have seen with the partial restriction of weapons exports to Israel a first significant step. The foreign policy spokesman of the Christian Democrats has now indicated that they may support sanctions against radical Israeli ministers. So let's see how the position is developing. I think the responsibility of Germany towards Israel exists, but this is Israel in the international recognized borders without the occupied Palestinian territories and occupied East Jerusalem. This is the area to which the German responsibility we have the responsibility. So on the other hand, we have a strong responsibility of respect of international law. And this is very much the very essence of Germany and also of our experience and our heritage from the Third Reich and the Holocaust. So I believe that we need to support this. And my feeling is that the German government moves in this direction. There are two ways in which the German government can participate. One is a much more active involvement in the Saudi-French initiative for the two-state solution. And the second is, which I think is more important, the recognition, the discussion within the European Union, how to deal with Israel, possible sanctions. And I think there Germany will not be in the forefront, but my guess is that Germany will move much more to make more clear signals towards Israel than it had been before, in order to help the Palestinian people in Gaza and the Palestinian people in general.